Hello and welcome to iOS Development Tutorials. In this tutorial, what we're going to look at is continuing on with our Hello World application, but we're going to add some customization to it. We're wanting to change away from all these default colors and font sizes and font types and go to something that we actually want to use and make it a little bit more of our own program. So with our main storyboard selected, let's go ahead and get started with that. Over here on the right hand side, you'll see where we can select our different attributes inspector, and we can change a lot of our attributes that we're looking at for each one of these particular objects. The first object we'd want to set is the background itself to the view. So if we select on the view, you'll see up here at the top that we're looking at the attributes for the view, and we can come over here to the background color, and we can either assign a recently used color, a color that's already default, or say other, and we're given this little color wheel that we can end up choosing for ourselves. For our tutorial, let's go ahead and select a nice blue color, just because I think blue is an easy color to go on the eyes, and we'll make it a little bit darker there. Now we can do the same thing for our different labels here. We'll select it. We will change the color of the label here, and we will first of all, let's bring up our darkness here so we can actually play with some of these. And let's go for a dark blue, something a little bit more of a navy, possibly even a little bit more purplish, but something that'll stick out very well. The second thing we want to do is we want to kind of adjust this font size to something that's going to be larger. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and expand this over here to the upper left. We'll adjust this all the way out to our width, and let's add some height to it as well. And we'll come back and we'll change this custom status part here in a moment. Now you'll see over here to font we can change the actual system text, so we can either make it bold or italic, or if we want to do a custom we can. But the thing to keep in mind is if you do custom fonts, not all iPhones will have the same fonts attached. So if you're going to do a custom font, you need to make sure you attach the font with it. But let's go ahead and go with our current system. And then we can also adjust our font to, say, a font size of 25. Now you'll also notice you can change the alignment, so we'll center it. And then there's this lines piece. Now this is an important part. You'll see that since we've adjusted our font to be larger, as we start changing our status, we can quickly run over to where these lines won't all fit. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we will make it allow for 3 lines worth of code. And what that means is for 3 lines, it'll constantly word wrap, and then it's just eventually going to run out of space, and you'll start getting that ellipses that's saying there's more text also beyond this label. On our text view, we can do all the same things as we were just doing, where we can adjust the font size, we can change the colors. We can also change the border style to either be nothing, or we can make it a 2D border, a 3D border, or just with our traditional rounded corners here. But there's one thing that's really nice about this, and this is this placeholder text. Currently we're saying a custom status label, so we know what this text box is for. But what we can do with the placeholder text is we can say enter custom status, and so now in this text box itself we'll know what we're wanting this to be for. So now if we click on this, we can get rid of this particular label and clean up our view itself a little bit more. And then on the button it's the same thing. We can change our type, so you have all these different options that you can use. And you can also create a custom button altogether. So if you were wanting to have a image as a button, or if you had like this really great graphic you want to use, you can do a custom and then assign it an image and a background from here to where you can actually change this button to anything that you want it to look like. If you're wanting to do text boxes and check boxes, those are components that are not built into iOS already. So this is how you would create those custom checkboxes for iOS to be able to have that functionality. So if we go ahead and run our code as it is, you'll see that it still says I cannot be changed. We have our placeholder in our text field, and if we click on our button, now you'll see that it drops to 2 lines and says, okay, maybe I can be changed. And that's great as far as setting the colors and the font sizes and everything on your components at runtime. But what if you wanted to change it programmatically? So let's say if I was to change my status, and I said let's make our status, hello world, but I also wanted to change the background color. Well, how can I do that from the code? And that's incredibly simple to do. Let's go over to our viewcontroller.m, and let's first start with our button pressed. If we're wanting to change the color, let's say we wanted to change the background color from blue to red. What we can do is say self.view.background color equals brace UIColor and then red color. So what this is saying now is get the background color, and I'm going to pass it a UI color, and it's going to be the red color that iOS already has defaulted as. This is what red is. So now when I click on it and I say just change it, you'll see that our background did change color red, and I already clicked in here, and that's why it's showing up a blank text. So if I say hello world, you'll see our text still shows up blue, but our background color is red. So using this piece here, self.view.background color, and then passing it a color, you can assign any color you want to the background. Well, that's great if you're wanting to use one of the defaulted colors. But let's say I wanted to make it my own color, something that I know the color code that I want, but it's not one that's already defaulted. Let's say I wanted to take this red and make it a different color instead altogether. Well, there's a few different things you can do. First of all, let's change this, and we'll comment this out for a moment. Let's do self.view.background color. We'll assign it UI color. And what we're going to do though is with this is go color with RGB and an alpha. So if we know what our RGB code is, we can go ahead and key that in. So let's use 245, 241, and 221. And our alpha, since we want it to always be visible, we're going to say a 1. So the transparency is going to be 100% opacity. We want to see everything. And let's go ahead and run this code. And so when I change the label text, you'll see though, but it changed to white. It didn't change to a color like I thought it would change. The reason is because with iOS, RGB codes are not 0 to 225. It is 0 to 1. As we see from here, is the red component is from 0 to 1 on all of these themselves. So what we need to do is we need to find out what that float value is of our different colors. And to do that, it's very simple. What we'll do is we will say divided by 255.0f. So if we use this for each one of these colors, what we'll do is we will get that decimal value that we're looking for each red, green, and blue. So now let's run it. And then we click our button. Now we're getting that separate color that we were looking for, something that's a little bit cleaner and easier to go with. So every time we click on the button, what we're going to see is take on our view, change that background color to a color that we assign of red, green, blue, as well as the opacity that we're looking for with the alpha. Now we can take the same code just as it is, and if we cut it out, and what we'll do is we'll put it to this view did load. And what this particular method is once your code has finished running and your program just opens up, it immediately starts to run this. So what we should see is when we run this program, it should now immediately be that color, not the blue color that we have assigned here. So let's rerun it. And there it is. So we immediately see that right off the bat. And then what we can also do is on a button press, stop our editor there, we can do the button press to where we can still change that color as well to something completely different. So the storyboard was originally set to blue. We then run the code and it makes it this custom color, and then whenever we click on our button itself, it now will change it even once again. So we can do those same things with any of our objects using the background color or the font color or any of those kind of properties, but using this UIColor and either assigning it a color that iOS knows or passing it a customized red, green, and blue with the alpha to it. But we need to remember that whenever we assign an RGB, it's a 0 to 1. So we need to divide it by 255 float so we can get the proper number for it. So like, subscribe, come back to us in the next tutorial where we'll start looking at images and all the different things we can do with that as we end up creating our application and trying to push this Hello World program as far as we can.